Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angela Olmos. If we haven't met yet, I'm a full-time realtor in the Northeast Florida area. I'm with Momentum Realty, and today I have my co-host here, Delaney Bravo, who's a loan officer with Fiber Mortgage. How are you doing today, Delaney?
I am good. I'm good. It's going to be a good day, getting those positive vibes going. How are you?
I'm good. I just dropped my boys off at camp, and I'm getting ready to do my show and start my day and just have a fabulous day. So I'm glad you're here.
Yes, and at my daughter's daycare, they do like water day every Friday, and this was the
Oh,
first one. So she is so excited. I just got my first picture of her out there, and she's having the time of her life. So it's
oh,
definitely summer.
that is so good. Yeah, I love all the fun summer activities for the kids. There's a lot of swimming and there's a lot of water play. It's just, yeah, it's what we do here in Florida when we have 90-degree weather outside, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
I think I might want to jump into pool later on too because it's beautiful out.
Yes.
So I wanted to today chat about closing costs, and I thought this would be a good topic to chat about because most people know that there is closing costs, but they're not really sure like what that means or how much does that mean. What we all know for sure is that when you purchase a home or when you sell a home, there is a sales price, but above and beyond that, there's an additional payment that you must make to get the title and the ownership of that property, or to pass on the title and the ownership to the buyer. And that is what we call closing costs. And the closing costs are closely related to both the sales part of it and the financing side of it. So I brought this flyer to share with you guys, which is posted on my blog, and I'll include the link below so you guys can check that out. But it's all about the facts on closing costs. And if you're thinking of buying a home or selling a home, this is something that you definitely have to visit, when you're in the process of either pre-qualifying or negotiating or just getting ready to close. So closing costs are the fees and the expenses that you must pay before becoming a legal homeowner of a condo or a house or a townhome. And closing costs vary depending on the purchase price of the home and how it's being financed. Okay. Now, most people don't realize, but there would be different closing costs depending on the loans. And I'm glad that you're here, Delaney, because you can shed a lot of light into that. Certain loans would have certain closing fees that might other loans not have, right?
Yes. Yep. So there's certain things on each kind of type of loan, and I can kind of run through some of those differences. But yes, it does depend on really your loan amount as well. So some of the closing costs are based off of the sales price. Some of them are based off the loan amount. So if you're putting 5% down versus 20% down, there are a few closing costs that will be slightly different because of your loan amount being bigger or smaller too.
Right. And what these would typically include would be things like government recording costs, like, recording your deed with the county, that type of thing. Appraisal fees, which we talked about appraisals just a few weeks ago, but this is what the bank is going to require to confirm the value of the house that you're buying because they're giving you a loan. They want to make sure that what you're buying is actually worth what you're paying for. So there would be an appraisal. And, I've seen this both, Delaney. I've seen it where they actually have the buyers pay for the appraisal up front while they're going through their loan processing. And I've also seen it where they pay at closing. So does that vary depending on the lender's policy, or how does that work?
Yes. So most lenders have an appraisal company that they use. So there is a separate appraisal company that has a panel of appraisers that are licensed in your area. So most of the time, those appraisal companies will not assign an appraiser to your order or schedule an appraiser without payment up front. And the reason for that, if you think about it, they have an appraiser go out and do a whole report and inspection. And let's say that you cancel on the contract, that appraiser still has to be paid. The one exception to this with our company and with most lending companies is VA. So VA loans don't require payment up front. You can pay those as part of your total amount for closing. The thing that we do as kind of a fail-safe is we do get your credit card information. Therefore, in the event that you do cancel the contract, and I communicate this, you would need to be charged for that appraisal if it has been done. One thing I like to go over, and I always go over all of the closing costs every single time I am doing a buyer's initial numbers when they go under contract, line item by line item. But the appraisal, if you pay it up front, you will see a credit saying paid before closing. So you won't be double charged regardless. So that is something that I know Angela talks about with her clients is be prepared to pay that appraisal. But there are certain things, and we'd go over that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful when you are able to pay it at closing. But like Delaney said, in the rare instance that something happens with that and that appraisal's already been done, then I guess the lender's best way would be to grab that credit card information so that that appraiser that's already gone out to the house and invested the time and the effort and his resources to get that done will still be compensated for it, even if you didn't close on it. So that's how that's dealt with. Now, credit report fees, those are always payable at closing. I've always seen those like in the settlement statement, right? And those are paid to the lender for having ran the credit report as you were processing the loan.
Yes. And one thing really quickly I'll say about that is ask your lender, and hopefully that would be me, but ask your lender, do you collect a credit card payment up front? Legally, lenders can get you to pay for a credit report when you're doing the application. That is becoming much more common. We do not do that. We float that cost. Let's say that you do an application and you are in a spot to buy right now. Let's say you're just looking at it and you want to buy a year from now. Let's say you go under contract and you cancel it for whatever reason. We will eat that cost. That is our service to you to get you pre-approved and for you to know where you're at. But you want to ask that question if you're using a different lender, because you might be expected to pay that $30, $50, $70 that lender charges for that credit report. So you want to make sure you're working with a lender who floats that cost for you. But if you don't do that, if we don't do that, it's just collected as part of your funds at closing.
Sounds good. Now, another thing that we see at closing is the lender origination fees, which is basically the fee to originate the loan.
Yes. Yep. So every lender has their own origination fee. If you think about it, this lender has a internal staff. They have an underwriter. Well, usually they have what's called a loan opener who preps your file for an underwriter. That is the person who approves your file. So you have a loan opener, an underwriter, a junior underwriter, a closer, a processor. So all of these people on top of your loan officer and our staff is working on your file. You don't talk to any of those people, but all of these people, rightfully so, have to be compensated for your file. So that is where you're getting that origination fee. You're getting that fee as a buyer for all of the behind the scenes of your file. There are ways to waive this fee, so ask us about that. However, that is your origination fee. The one thing I'll say on this quickly is every lender has a different origination fee. Our fee is $9.95 in most instances. So you want to ask, because a lot of lenders will say we have a 1% origination fee. Sounds great up front, but if you're buying a $250,000 home, that's $2,500. So working with a lender that has this set across the board is really important, because you don't want to get in a situation where it sounds great, but it's actually double, triple that amount.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Now, the other thing that we see on closing costs, it's title services. And this has more to do with the actual title company that's handling the closing. Beyond what the lender does, there's title work that needs to be done when you're closing on a home. And that typically has to deal with pulling stoppables from the associations just to make sure that there isn't anything pending that still hasn't been paid by the current owner before the title gets transferred to the new buyer with the HOA. The same with any kind of liens that would have been on the property, either by a contractor or any mortgages. And there's a proper name for that. That's a title search. That's what they do. They do a title search, so that would be part of the title services. And then they also provide a title commitment, which is kind of like the value that they give, is the assurance of that title being good to transfer on to the new buyer without any contingencies or anything pending on that. So those are also considered part of the closing costs, and they're a required part of the closing, again, to the buyer's benefit and also the sellers too, because you never want to worry about somebody else coming back and saying, hey, by the way, you sold me this house and there was this left on it. So that's the purpose of that, the title company doing the title search and the title insurance on that. Do you have anything to add with that, Colleen?
The only thing I'll add is that, and Angela goes over this in her contracts, but there's a section where it says buyer will pay, seller will pay. And there are, even if the seller isn't giving you any credits towards your closing costs, there are items that customarily the seller is expected to pay on your behalf. So I go through that section and I move over all of those fees. For example, the survey, if we need a new survey on the property, let's say the current owners put up a fence, we need a new survey, that's typically paid by the seller. If there's a closing fee for the title company that they charge to close your loan, do the signing with you, that is typically paid by the seller. So you want to work with a lender that knows all of those things and make sure to move over the things that are customarily paid. But yes, the bulk of those charges from the title company, and they are going to be the same across any lender. So when you're comparing lenders, you really want to pay attention to your origination fee and your interest rate, because all the other fees are going to be what they're going to be. The only difference is if your lender is doing a good job to disclose and explain and accurately estimate what those fees will be. You can have two loan estimates and the closing costs could be 10,000 here and 12,000 here. They could have the same origination fees, but if the 10,000 one is just leaving off $1,000 of title fees that are going to need to be charged, they're going to have to be charged no matter what. So you're going to have the 12,000. So working with a lender that estimates your closing costs accurately will give you the closest figure. But yep, title insurance, title fees, recording fees, that's all going to be under the title fees for your loan to close.
Exactly. Yeah. And that would include that tax service fee, the survey, which is a map that if you're not familiar with it, because a lot of people think of surveys like what we get as feedback from, where we've been. But the actual survey that we're referring to here is the survey that maps out your property lines to your property that you're buying. So yes, you're buying a home, but typically that home is attached to a piece of land. And it could be very small, it could be very big. And what you are able to determine how much land you actually own with the ownership of that home is by looking at the survey. The survey would tell you the depth of the property, the width of the property. It'll have measurements on there. It's probably a document that you'll only see at closing, except for maybe when you are ready to add on a pool to your backyard. Then that survey would have to be dug out again, so that way they know exactly where to place a pool. It also shows like anything that's underground. I've seen like notations for any kind of easements or things like that, which would be helpful if you are adding on something else to your home. Also, if you're adding on a fence, it's really helpful in that sense. So that's where the survey comes in. Obviously, the attorney's fees will be what they charge for the actual closing, for them personally being there and preparing all these documents, and then the underwriting fees, which are also part of the lender's part. Now, how much are they? Typically, closing costs, if you had to give it a dollar value, what we estimate is anywhere between 2 and 5% of the total purchase price. And I know that seems like a big variance, but there's so many moving parts here, mostly because depending on the type of loan, you may or may not have certain costs that are associated with that type of financing. There may be certain things that might have higher taxes. Maybe certain communities might be located in a CBD and some other ones might not. So that also could affect your closing costs. So the example that we have here is typically on a $363,000 home, which is kind of like an average price point or the median sales price for Duval County at this time in 2023. So we've got a closing cost of approximately anywhere between $7,200 and $18,200. I know it's a big stretch. And that's the reason why you kind of want to know like how much they are, but you definitely want to sit down with a lender to discuss all of this and look at the numbers and really know whether it's going to be $7,000 or $18,000, because that could play a part into it.
Absolutely. And what I've realized over the years is a really safe estimate I use is about 3.5%. And that is based off of what is required in our local counties. So working with a local lender is extremely important because if you're working with a lender who you found online that's based in California, yes, they know California fees like the back of their hand, but they don't know those customary fees that the seller pays, our taxes, our CDDs. So 3.5% is a really good estimate that I use, and over hundreds and hundreds of loans, that's about where we land. One thing that you want to make sure of with the closing costs is that your lender is adding in prorations, and prorations are just items that the seller is going to pay for you, such as your property taxes. If you bought a home this year, well, taxes are due November 1st. So you would technically only have owned the home for 3, 5 months, depending on when you're closing. So how do we handle that? Well, the seller at closing is going to give you a credit for the time they owned the home, because when those taxes come due in November, then you will have to pay them. So we collect all of that as part of your closing costs, but it's also not fair to you to not give you a credit because you didn't own the home. So from November 1st of 2022 through your close date, let's just call it 6/9 as of today, we would hand calculate how much the taxes would be, and the seller gives you a credit of that at closing. We also collect it, but that way it washes out. So you're not being you're not being charged for that extra. So I hand calculate those estimates. I calculate title prorations, HOA prorations. So just things again that you could see 18,000, but really it might be 9,000 or whatever it is once all of those things are estimated in there.
Yeah, and the 3.5 that you calculate, it would be on buyer's closing costs, right?
That is correct. Yeah, because the seller has closing costs as well, right?
Yeah, the seller has closing costs, and this has a lot to do with like the local traditions of real estate sales, because I have seen here in Northeast Florida, it is customary and expected for the seller to pay for the closing fee, okay, and then also the title insurance, which is probably one of the bigger expenses for the seller, and also along with the title search, so all like the title work, but that's also negotiable. I have seen it where on a competitive offer, a buyer could offer to pay the seller's closing costs, and then that would have somewhat of an effect as to how much their closing costs would be. So it's all relative, but yes, you want to definitely work with a lender who's familiar with like local traditions, and that's how it's typically done here in Northeast Florida. I just had a thought, and I wanted to share this because not every closing, most of the closings happen with financing. But a 2% closing cost would probably be like on a cash transaction where you have very little fees. So a lot of these things just have to do with the way the loans are structured. But anytime you're taking on a mortgage, I would say, yeah, definitely budget, like Lainey said, about 3.5%, but it could be anywhere from like 2 to 5%. So the best thing to do is just go ahead and connect with us, and then do a pre-qualification. Delaney does a great job at like actually getting you pre-qualified, but going beyond that to explain to you what would be expected for you to bring to closing, what would be expected for you to make as your monthly payment, how much would your insurance be, so those are all things that you need guidance through. Yesterday, I had someone tell me that the biggest value that we can provide for our buyers is actually helping them make a decision. And I thought that was brilliant. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I specialize in, helping people navigate what could be a complicated process. But through the experience that I've had closing these deals for past 18 years, I can guide you through that to help you make a sound decision for you. And your decision might actually be different from the next buyer's decision. And it's a very personal type of purchase that you're making here. But there's still some very, predictable things that you're going to have to think about, such as closing costs, where we're here to help you navigate through all of that and help you make sound decisions.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's what I had as far as closing costs. I think this was helpful.
Yes, very helpful, very helpful. And it's something to be prepared about, because if you have a down payment, there's also these closing costs. So if you have 15,000 in the bank to use for your cash to close, that's the funds you say I can spend on this new home. If your down payment is 10,000 and you have that 5,000 left, but your costs for your closing costs are 7,000, that's something we discuss, and we can communicate to Angela and say, hey, the buyer has 5,000. So if those closing costs are estimated to be, let's say, 8,000, then we need to make it our mission, if possible, to see if we can find a seller that will give us a little bit of a credit to meet in the middle. So these are things that we work on as a team to get you where you need to be. So it's just something that, you want to have a great realtor, a great lender that works as your team to get this all figured out for you to meet your goals and meet what you have in the bank. There's nothing worse than thinking, I need my $20,000 down payment, and you get that first estimate that says 30,000, and nobody prepared you for that. So rest easy. You're not going to have that with us. And we'll dig deep with you and make sure that you're comfortable with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are ways of structuring a buyer's offer to make it more attractive for a seller to say yes to the closing costs. There are definitely different elements to an offer. So it's not just the sales price or the closing cost. There's a lot of different things. And that's where I would meet with you and then help you craft that offer where it will be compelling for a seller to say, yes, we'll give you the closing costs. But there's a way of structuring that.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you need any help with any kind of closing costs, then you know how to reach us this weekend.
Yes.
And do share this video with anyone that could benefit from this information. I think that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, so now we're going to get into what's happening in town.
Yes. I had something else to discuss, but we're going to save that for next week because it's kind of its own little thing. No. Oh my gosh, you're fine. I'm going to go right into Jacksonville because we kind of went good in depth on those closing costs. So if you can share bring up the Jacksonville stuff, I'll go ahead and chat about that. Oop, I think somehow we lost her, but I'm going to go ahead and chat all about the closing costs here. Excuse me, the events. So the first thing I have, and I can't get my screen up, but is Beauty and the Beast. So that is June 9th through July 23rd. So that is happening all this month, all basically next month. It's Disney's Beauty and the Beast, Broadway. It's going to be super fun. I have a 4-year-old. I think she'd really, really like this. So it is actually off of Beach Boulevard. It is at the Alhambra Dinner Theater. And if you bring that up when you have a second, Angela, I can kind of show the little picture here.
Can I tell you how awesome you are to hold this stage together while I got booted off the internet? For a second, I'm
I stumbled for a minute. Go? Let me not lie. I was like,
no,
you are good. I know. I saw you
totally improvise. You're like, okay, I got this. Exactly. Thank you.
Let's roll solo. So yeah, Beauty and the Beast at the Alhambra, super fun, super. I don't know why that's so small, but we're just rolling with it. There we go. Beauty and the Beast, super fun. If you have any kiddos, they would love this. I'm actually probably going to take my daughter to it. She's going to be 4 in just, oh my God, in a week or two. I can't even believe it. So super fun one there. The next one I have is Beyond King Tut. It's an immersive experience. So if any of y'all have heard about the Van Gogh exhibit, this is one that is for King Tut. And I mean, let alone the projections and stuff are so freaking cool. So just something to kind of look at. This is going to be downtown off of Hogan Street. Prices start at $33.99 for adults and $24 for kiddos 5 to 15. So I could take my daughter to this. I don't know how cool she would be with King Tut, but just to kind of show you a picture, that is kind of what you would be walking into. Did you go to Van Gogh? Have you ever been to one of these?
I did.
Was it fun? I haven't been.
It was amazing. It was beautiful. The kids actually enjoyed it. We didn't stay as long as we could have. If I had not had the kids, I probably would have been there longer. They were just getting a little antsy after 30 minutes, but they did enjoy it. I mean, it was just like so futuristic, so realistic. Like you could see like everything moving, but it was all a projection. So it's just a magical way of like bringing like life, bringing art to life. And I can imagine this is probably going to be even more impactful because of all the visuals and the story of King Tut and all that. It's really cool.
Yes, I didn't even know they moved too. So
Right.
that, and it would be like such a cool little date night, like dinner and this, like something completely different. So just wanted to throw that one out there. And then the last one we have is beer school, the brewing process at Legacy Ale Works. So if you are in Jacksonville, Legacy Ale Works has a lot of events. I've realized over doing this for a couple months that we have a lot of stuff that's at Legacy Ale Works. So that's that's just one plus to Jacksonville. So many events. So this is the 14th. So next week from 6:30 to 8:30. It's going to be all about the brewing process. So this would be really cool for Father's Day. It has a 2-hour kind of education. So if you're looking for something for Father's Day that's kind of out of the box,
Hold on a
this
second.
might
When
be a
is
fun.
is that this weekend? Father's Day.
It says June 14th. So
Okay.
let's see. I'm trying to put my calendar. When is the 14th? The 14th is Wednesday, this coming Wednesday coming up. So so I don't know. I thought that would be kind of fun. 2 hours. I know, super fun for Father's Day, something different. 2 hours of education as well as a sampling of various beers. That's what all of them are going to be there for. Let's not joke around. But yeah, so those are my 3 things. We got Beauty and the Beast, we got King Tut, and we got Beer School. So I covered kind of all of the bases there. There's a lot more happening too, but I just picked 3. So jacksonvilleevents.com is a really cool website that kind of lays out everything. So I would definitely recommend checking that out at the beginning of each week too, or just come here and we'll give you a few as well.
That's it. Awesome. Well, that looks all amazing. It sounds like a really great weekend coming up. Did you get to share some of the info that you wanted to share about that program for investors too?
I'll save that for next week, just so we can kind of dig deeper on it, because it's really cool. So stay tuned for next week. If you are an investor or if you know anybody who is starting to want to invest in real estate, this program is a game changer. So we'll dig into that next week as well.
Yeah, super excited about that. All right, guys. So there you have it. Today we talked all about closing costs. Any information that you might need for beyond what we shared, feel free to reach out. And that's about it for today. So until next time, remember to be kind to one another, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Bye.